morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hey, welcome to the Studio Q Show Live. My name is Quinn Jacobson, and we know what we're doing here. Most of you are you're back for more death denial. I can't believe it. But you know what we do here. We've taken a little bit of a break on some of the photo stuff, although we're going to do it today. But welcome. Good to see you, Linda and Will from Erie, PA, and Boguslav's back on Facebook there. Good to see everybody. Pablo and Jeffrey. Aaron's with us today. We're going to get a whole bunch of people in here. We're going to have him share some of his work. Jan from Norway, good to see you, brother. And Jean and Thilo, hello from Tokyo. We've got a long technical section today from Japan, actually. Kubo Prince. Some of you guys might have heard of him, but we're going to go over that. So welcome. Thanks for coming back for another death denial session. It's not really what everybody thinks it is, right? Once you get into this and once you get dissecting it, it's not as grotesque or as difficult to handle as some might think. But we're going to jump right into it because at the end of the day, hey, welcome, Ismail, Mr. Ismail. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us. It's not as dreadful as some might say, although if you ponder on it too long, it may be. But we're doing this series to give you guys, or I'm doing this series to give you guys some fodder, this English word we use, fodder, some information as a creative person to deal with and to make work about. At the end of the day, if you spend some time with death anxiety and death denial and these theories, and then you look at photographs or bodies of work again, you're going to be able to dissect everything. You'll be able to pull the skull out. Why do you have a clock in there? What, all these, the decaying bodies. You use wet plate. Oh, right there, we can have a discussion, right? But you'll start connecting these dots, as I'm always saying. So welcome, everybody. It's good to see everybody, and it's good to have, I'm really happy that you guys came back for this because at the end of the day, you never know when you're talking about this stuff. People say, I thought he was going to talk about wet collodion. What is this stuff? So thank you. Let's do this. Let's get on board and let's start sharing some information here. We're going, how this goes. We're going to go through this and take a look at what we're going to do. We call this, remember you must die, memento mori. This is what we're doing today. Like I said, we've got Aaron in here, and he's going to show some work from his project called SANCTUM. If you speak Latin, you'll know what that is. He could talk about that. We will have a technical Q&A. Like I said, the gentleman from Motoyuki, I think is his name, Kubo Prince. He sent me a long list. We're going to go through those. It may help some people as well in here. And then we're going to have recommended reading and recommended watching, our kind of standard Studio Q show live stuff. Although if you're not watching it live, it's not a problem. You can listen or watch later. So I wanted to start off with this. I thought this was appropriate. This is from the Bronx Zoo in New York in 1963. On June 8th, the Illustrated London News ran the following story about an exhibition at the Gorilla House at the Bronx Zoo in New York City. The exhibit told visitors, quote, "You are looking at the most dangerous animal in the world. It alone, of all the animals that ever lived, can exterminate and has entire species of animals. Now it has the power to wipe out all life on Earth." And we're going to talk about this today. We're going to talk about terror management theory. The spring off of death anxiety is Solomon, Pazinski, and Greenberg. I apologize, I forgot. And I think it's Greenberg. The three authors that we're talking about here that's taking Becker's theories of death anxiety. Today, we're going to give you real life examples of how this affects your life. And one of them is this, although it's wrapped up in a metaphor. But looking in the mirror at the most dangerous animal in the world. So true. Quick recap. Becker says in the death denial, the purpose of humankind is to survive and reproduce, right? Just like any other creature, right? Everything is based on that. Ernest Becker formulated the theory of human behavior is based on the premise that the fear of death The fear of death is the motivating principle of human behavior. In other words, everything we do is in service of this knowledge of our impending death. And if you haven't been with me for a few weeks, you'll catch on to it here. We're very intelligent, right? We got this big old frontal lobe, this big old cortex hanging out here. And it's created a problem for us. We're really smart. We can think abstractly into the future, remember the past, imagine things and build them like a house in the mountains in Colorado and make that happen. That's pretty incredible stuff for this big old chunk of stuff up here to do. But it also creates a problem. That's the awe. What is the dread, as Kierkegaard says? The dread is that big old chunk of meat up there, that fat mass, allows us to know that we're going to die. And that creates a lot of psychological distress and anxiety. So two-sided sword, right? Really smart. We can do all this stuff and think in the abstract and create this stuff. Oh, and guess what? We have the knowledge that we're going to die. And that affects our life greatly. So that creates death anxiety. And then we need a buffer. And last week we talked about culture and worldviews and what your culture offers you to put in front so you don't think about that death anxiety, so you're distracted. We need things in our heads and activities that we do to ward off, to stave off, to quell this constant reminder that we're going to die. And it's everywhere. We see dead leaves, we see car accidents, we see, bad news on the TV or the movies, or, one of our relatives died. We're constantly inundated. Oh, wow, I feel a lump. Oh my God, we're constantly inundated with this idea of death everywhere we turn. So it's not like when you say, oh, I don't even think about death that much. Yes, you do. And you'd be surprised how much you think about it. And actually what you do because you're thinking about it. That's the big one. So that's a quick recap on Becker's stuff. Now, today we're going to go into the first section of Solomon. Sheldon Solomon's going to be on here in a couple of weeks. We're going to go in the first section of terror management theory. Dr. Sheldon Solomon, Jeff Greenberg. I did get that. I said go. Maybe Jeff Greenberg, Sheldon Solomon, and Tom Pazinski. Tom Pazinski is actually real close to me right here. He's in University of Colorado Springs. It's the closest, biggest town to where I live right now. Probably maybe an hour away or so from that university up here in the mountains. I didn't know that Pazinski was here. Sheldon is kind of the face of these ideas of terror management theory. And they wrote a book called The Worm at the Core. And guess what today's recommended reading is? The Worm at the Core. This book is about all of the theories of Becker's put into action. Lab studies, experiments, they're experimental social psychologists, all of them. So they've taken these ideas and these theories and they put them to practice. And that's what this book is about. And the worm at the core, you can imagine what the metaphor around that, right? The apple, the garden, knowledge, all this stuff. There's a whole metaphor there. So, and you read the book. It's amazing. And it'll change the way you consume all of this information and maybe even apply it in weird ways. Hey, Steve Tan from Malaysia. I'm just looking over here. And there's Mr. Analog from the UK. Good to see you again. And Central Texas, Mr. Don Day. Good to have you in here. So terror management theory, what is it? Just like it says, it's both a social and evolutionary psychology theory originally proposed by those gentlemen and codified in their book, Worm at the Core, on the role of death in life. Terror management theory posits that the juxtaposition of an inclination towards self-preservation, meaning I want to survive, that drive we have, with a highly developed intellectual abilities, right, this big old chunk we just talked about, that make humans aware of their vulnerabilities, i.e. death. And inevitable death creates the potential for paralyzing terror. And that's what this book is really about. According to TMT, terror management theory, death anxiety drives people to adopt worldviews that protect their self-esteem, their worthiness, their sustainability, and allow them to believe that they play an important role in a meaningful world. That's called self-esteem. If you don't believe, if you can't keep faith, if you can't sustain faith in a meaningful world view, you will start going downhill mentally. You will become depressed. You'll have, all those things we talked about before about when your self-esteem starts to erode. And these buffers, these cultural things that we do, keep our self-esteem up, and they shield us from this death anxiety. So that's, in a nutshell, that's what TMT is. But I'll make it very, very clear to you here in just a minute. There's Sheldon there. So these are two psychological constructs that must be maintained. Just like I said, individuals must sustain faith in a meaningful worldview, and they must feel that they're valued, protected members, object of significance within this worldview. Psychologists call it self-esteem, or a lot of them do. So it's really important that you understand the problem, the solution that we create with our culture that gives us things that we can distract ourselves with so we don't think about this all the time. Because like we said a million times, if we thought about this constantly, we'd be in the ball laying in the corner, rolled up like hovered up and shaking. You wouldn't be able to do anything. You'd be, like they say, reaching for those sedatives the size of a Buick. So we must maintain those two psychological constructs. If we don't, bad things start to happen. So let's talk about some real life examples. I didn't know who Whitney Cummings is, or what is, I guess. She's a comedian. She writes movies. She does all kinds of stuff. This is really amazing. Some of you might know who Joe Rogan is. He's in America here. He used to be, I think he's a martial arts fighter, and he's really into fitness and stuff. And he's got this really popular podcast. But listen to Whitney. This is so funny. She's on track. All of her TMT stuff is on track. But she misquotes. She calls, she doesn't call the worm at the core. Listen to what she calls the book until they actually pull it up. It's funny. But check this out. This is just a random lay person. She's not a psychologist. She's not a psychiatrist. None of that. A random person that came face to face with death anxiety and then got turned on to terror management theory. Check this out. I think you guys will like this. I think. Sorry.
I got super into terror management theory recently.
What's that?
It's basically like the guy that Ernest Becker. This is, my dad died a couple years ago, and I hadn't really had a lot of death, and I started I started getting into, and you called it too one day, you were like, you're doing too much shit. Like, you're doing too much stuff. Stop doing so much stuff. And I didn't realize, like, when you have death in your, basically terror management theory is, this is something you know, of course, but that because we have a prefrontal cortex and we're basically the only animal that can ponder the future and the past, like, we know we're going to die and we can't tolerate that anxiety. It's too stressful for us. So we basically have to keep ourselves busy and do meaningless shit to feel important. We have to win awards. We have to have titles. We have to get things in order to have a sense of immortality, right? It's basically just managing the anxiety of knowing that we're rotting every day. It's just dying and could die at any moment. It's just like a false sense of control and longevity. There's a great book called The Worm in the Hole. Solomon. I read this book and it totally blew my mind because I realized so many of my behaviors were just about this fear of death because it had been sort of right in front of me so quickly. And his death was so freak that I had a really hard time coping with the anxiety of death coming so suddenly and so shockingly, and like, it fucked me up pretty bad. But I started just making myself busy with super irrelevant shit in order to try to cope with that anxiety. And so I got super into terror management theory.
Terror management theory.
Terror, like trying to manage the terror, the daily terror that we know we're gonna die.
But the book.
Yeah, but it's
the core.
It's something else. It's a less corny cover, the one that I have. But
what's
just
the same title?
TMT, terror management theory. Terror management theory is a little bit controversial, I think, because it also justifies some like supremacy thinking, a lot of I'm better than you, and like cultural superiority stuff. I'd have to, there's a guy named Solomon that did a talk about it, just because you need so badly to feel important that you start to sort of have the delusion that you're better than other people.
Yeah.
Just because you feel so insignificant, because you know you're going to die. We know we're a speck of dust. We know this is all ephemeral and fleeting and that we don't matter. So we have to do things to feel like we matter.
Oh, that makes sense.
because we don't.
So you sort of exercise your superiority over people
Yes.
in order to shield yourself from the futility of your existence.
Yes, and to feel immortal.
Oh.
And you know what I mean? To procreate, the idea, because we know our mortality is so present in our amygdala all day, every day, that I'm better than you, therefore I'm going to procreate more, and we are going to sustain and propagate so that we have a sense of lastingness. That's why we want to make a name for ourselves. That's why we want to get famous, have tangible things, stuff like that. It's an anxiety that manifests in materialism, workaholism, needing titles, sort of shit like that.
Wow, that makes sense. So nasty, evil people that subjugate all their employees.
Yeah.
Yell at everybody. And like that's what they're doing.
No, they're gonna die.
Wow.
Yeah.
I know.
But they're not even. It's so deep in the subconscious. They have no awareness of why they're behaving the way they're behaving.
It's they've done these studies where, because I got super into it, because I didn't recognize my behavior. I felt like kind of the zombie. I was like trying to like set up all these TV shows, and I was like writing all these movies, and I was just like, and I was like, this is so weird because my dad just died. I should know exactly what matters in life, which is none of this shit, achievements or money or any of that. But I was super into like, I gotta buy this house and I need to get, you know, this and this thing and this watch. And I was like, this is so not who I am. But it was me trying to cope sort of with all of this anxiety about death. But they did all these studies where they showed subjects a video and subliminal messaging, put one frame of just the word death, imperceptible to the actual eye. And afterwards, they showed people pictures of woods or cities and said, where would you rather be? And you would normally go, beautiful woods, nature. And they always pick cities because you just subconsciously felt more scared and wanted to be in a place that was safer. Shit like that.
Cities are safer than the woods?
I mean, just the idea of some protection and, you know,
lots of folks.
Civilization. Yeah. The woods are scary because we're on some level know that we're only superficially at the top of the food chain. You know, if we're out in the woods with a bear and there's no guns or cages, we're going to lose. It's like the idea that we just know how vulnerable we are.
That's interesting because I would feel like there's some anxiety attached to the overpopulation aspect of cities.
For sure.
There's got to be some of that.
And the cars and the noises.
Constant noise. We're not designed for that, right?
The fight or flight. We're always in fight or flight mode, basically.
So she did a pretty good job with that. I mean,
the Joe Rogan experience.
Being a complete lay person, right? She did a pretty good job with that. She really did. That's what we're doing today. We're going to talk about putting how these scientists, how these experimental social psychologists, primarily Sheldon Solomon, but Greenberg and Pazinski, all three of them, how they took these theories and actually applied them. And she talked a little bit about that. We'll clarify that here. But the empirical data, right? This is science. I'll talk about opinions. If we have a conversation and you come to me and say, hey, let's talk about our opinions. I'll talk about my opinions on topics. But it can only go so far until we have to bring data or facts in or science in. And so that's what I'm doing with this portion. I want to show you the actual psychological studies that have been done on death, anxiety, and terror management and let you connect these dots, so to speak, and understand what's going on. So there's been over 150 case studies completed on terror management theory. And the ones you're going to see right now, the judges setting bond, the Christians and the Jews, the black die and the flag, and the crucifix hammer, these are objects, and the hot sauce experiment. Now, what this is going to show you is that when human beings are reminded of their death, they act very differently to people that are different from them. And again, I'll reiterate, for 30 or 40 years, however long I've been in this game of photography, my main focus, no pun intended, my main focus has been marginalized communities. And really what my main focus has been an interest in why people treat people who are different so terribly bad. Genocide, othering, marginalized communities, all of it. Why we do this human behavior. That's why I'm so turned on to Becker. I've had two major kind of life-changing events for me in my life, and especially in my later adult life. One has to do with health and medical truths, which I learned, and I put my health back in order. And the second one is this, about why we treat people the way we do. And I feel like right now I have really good scientific, hardcore data on both of those topics. And that's why I feel that I can speak confidently on this, because I've done enough in here, done a lot of this long enough to connect the dots. And I know it's just personal, kind of anecdotal, but the high level stuff is science. That's what we're going to look at right now. So I'm going to pull up this. Do I have it up here yet? No, I don't. I'm going to pull up this little bit from Solomon and crew, and they're going to talk about these experiments here. Check this out. I think you'll like it. Can I play it? Maybe, yeah.
Enter the team of Sheldon Solomon, Tom Puzinski, and Jeff Greenberg. For the last 20 years, this trio and their colleagues have been conducting empirical laboratory experiments to substantiate the claims of Ernest Becker about the effects of death denial. They've conducted over 150 studies in support of what they call terror management theory. These groundbreaking studies display that when reminded of death, test subjects do indeed react aggressively towards those who are different, and positively towards those who are similar.
In a sense, we're many gods.
In the early 1980s, when we started speaking in public about Becker's ideas, some folks were intrigued, some folks were horrified. You're an assemblage of blood and guts and organs that, should a knife impact upon your belly at an unfortunate angle, would spill out on the pavement, just like you see those squashed animals on the side of the road. But what most people said is, look, we don't know what to do with these ideas. It's like poetry. It may be interesting, but there's no way that you can actually test them. And this is where our training as experimental social psychologists was actually put to good use.
Terror management theory came out of the writings of Ernest Becker. His writings answered some questions that we had been asking in our own work. We were social psychologists, and we're very focused on empirical research.
What we said is, well, okay, let's try and think about ways of taking all of these ideas and let's really boil them down into some basic statements about the nature of reality that we could then use to generate hypotheses and go out and actually test.
The first component of terror management theory states that individuals need to sustain faith in a meaningful worldview. The second component states that individuals need to feel as though they are valued, protected members, objects of significance within this worldview. Psychologists would generally call this self-esteem.
And if we can sustain these two psychological constructs, then we can function relatively securely in the world. And if these constructs are threatened, then we're going to feel anxiety and have a need to defend those constructs.
So we developed what we call the mortality salience hypothesis. And all that says is, look, if culture serves a death-denying function, then if you remind people that they're going to die, that should momentarily really increase the need for the death-denying aspects of their particular beliefs about reality. And that should be reflected by their reactions to other individuals who either bolster or support those beliefs, or who undermine those beliefs by either being hostile to them or merely different from them. The very first study that we did was with municipal court judges in Tucson, Arizona.
Judges have a kind of clear set of values that are part of their worldview, and that is to uphold the law. And so what we thought is that if we make some judges think about their own death, they should become more punitive toward a lawbreaker. So half the judges, on a random basis, were given questionnaires that asked them about their own death. Half were not given such a questionnaire.
And then we had them actually look at an actual court case. The most common case in municipal court in Tucson is solicitation of prostitution.
They were simply asked to recommend a bond for the prostitute. Okay. What we found is the judges who were reminded of their own death before setting bond for the alleged prostitute recommended a bond of $455. The control judges, who were not reminded of their own death, set a bond, an average bond of $50.
Okay, so you see what that does right there. Just in a quick, the judges were presented, half of them reminded of their death, half of them not. The half that was reminded of their deaths, they were asked to set a bond, or how much does this person have to pay to be released from jail, a prostitute soliciting. The ones that were reminded of their death, $455 or whatever he said, right? The ones that not reminded, $50. That's a real, and this is a classic thing. Watch what happens here. They'll keep going.
In another study, Christian test subjects were asked to complete a questionnaire intended to determine how people form impressions of others. What the subjects didn't realize is that the researchers were actually making determinations about them. Embedded within some questionnaires were questions specifically formulated to make the reader think about his or her own death. The students were then asked to give their impressions of two fictitious individuals who on paper shared similar personality traits but differed in religious affiliation.
And the hypothesis was that after the Christian subjects thought about their own death, they should be especially positive in their reactions to a fellow Christian student and especially negative toward the Jewish student. And that's exactly what we found.
The students who did not receive death reminders showed no preference in their evaluations. These results were important indicators that attitudes towards others change when one is confronted with one's own death. However, the results did not speak to behavioral changes.
And so one example of a study that we've done to test this idea was a study in which we wanted to see if reminding people of their own death would make them more reluctant to use cultural symbols or icons in inappropriate ways.
For this study, subjects were asked to participate in what they were told were research experiments designed to explore both personality and creative problem solving. Once again, subjects completed personality questionnaires, some of which contained death reminders.
When they're done with that, they come out, then we describe the two tasks for them, and their job is to try to complete the task.
The first task required subjects to sift sand from a jar also containing water and black dye. Various items were available to help complete this task.
We set it up so that the only object they could use to successfully achieve the goal of sifting the sand out was a little American flag. And so what they would have to do is secure the American flag with a rubber band on an empty jar and then pour the black dye through the American flag, which of course ruins the American flag.
For the second task, subjects were asked to hang a crucifix on the study room wall. Again, various items were available to help them do so.
In order to do that, the only object they could use to successfully hammer the nail into the wall so they could hang up the crucifix was the crucifix itself.
Those students who had received death reminders tried more alternative ways to complete their tasks. They were more
Unbelievable.
apprehensive to desecrate their most cherished cultural icons and took twice as long as those who were not reminded of their death prior to the experiment.
Unbelievable
The
stuff.
management team had established that changes in behavior occurred when people thought about their own death. They were prepared to conduct what was to become their most striking and ominous study. If it could be determined that thinking of death caused behavior patterns to change, could it not also be determined that these behaviors might in fact be aggressive toward other individuals?
The problem with measuring any type of aggressive behavior in a laboratory situation is the ethical concerns that it brings up. We can't exactly have people punching one another, hitting, shooting, stabbing. That's frowned on ethically. So what we did was we devised a measure where we could safely assess intent to harm another person. And we did that by using hot sauce.
You know, Becker argued, and we got into this partly because we thought this can help explain real-world prejudice and aggression against different others. But it was inspired by real incidents in which people have used hot sauce to physically attack other people. There was a case where a cook was angry at police and spiked a couple of cops' food with hot sauce. More significant and less humorous, there are numerous cases in which parents have used hot sauce to punish their children, which is a form of child abuse. But in the lab, what we thought we might be able to do is at least get some indication of an intention to hurt someone else simply because you've been reminded of your own death and they're threatening an aspect of your worldview. In this paradigm, the subjects come in and they're told that the study concerns personality and food preferences.
Subjects were once again given a set of supposed personality questionnaires. Some included the death reminder and others did not. Then, in what subjects were told was an unrelated study, they were asked to allot a variable amount of extremely hot sauce for a participant of dissimilar political background to taste and rate. Those who had received death reminders prescribed more than twice the amount of hot sauce as those who did not receive the death reminders.
Fascinating.
This has profound implications. These studies show that reminders of death play an influential role in the human psyche and can inspire us to act aggressively. While hot sauce itself might seem benign, the implications of these studies are frightening. What happens when the means of aggression is not hot sauce, but rather a gun or another weapon? And what might be the result if the issue at hand was whether or not to provide food aid to a starving country? Would we act differently if their culture posed a threat to our psychological equanimity?
So that's their studies. And I thought that was fascinating, or some of their studies. I thought that was fascinating and super interesting in the sense that they're actually taking Becker's theories and applying them and seeing these results. And if you start looking around the world and you see what's happening, I just had a thought here in America. Puerto Rico is a territorial. It's a you know what Puerto Rico is. They're Americans that live in Puerto Rico, right? It's part of America. Had a big hurricane during Trump's administration. Had a bunch of problems with getting aid to them. They held back aid, those kinds of things. That last portion just kind of reminded me of that a little bit. If you start, looking at your world and looking at the politics and the actions of these, quote, leaders and groups, you're going to start connecting these dots of what Becker's talking about lashing out at others who are different. You remind people of their death, and they become very aggressive to people who are different, right? They used hot sauce in that experiment, but they could use about anything, really. Let me go back to my little show here. Get back on track, maybe. StreamYard. No, not that one. Uh-oh, I don't cut myself off. Let me try this again. I want to have, you guys can try this if you want. If you don't, no worries. But where is my, there it is. I'm trying to get my screen back up here. You can try this little exercise. You might find it interesting. You might not. Might be a little too disturbing for you. Have you ever written your own obituary? If you've never written your own obituary, you should try it for two reasons. Number one, kind of makes you think about, obviously, how you want to be remembered and those kinds of things. But sometimes it'll encourage you to prioritize or give you priorities of what's important and what's not. I had this the exercise years ago. I can't remember what course I was taking or what I was studying. But writing your obituary, look into it. It's an interesting, kind of fascinating thing. It's a more positive thing about approaching your own, how you deal with, think about death, your own death, what anxieties you might have around that. It's great fodder too for creativity, those kinds of things. Really interesting that way. If you've never done that, try that and see what happens. That's a brief introduction. I'm going to let Sheldon Solomon do the heavy lifting on this. But that's death anxiety, Becker's theories, death anxiety, Solomon, Greenberg, Brzezinski's terror management theories, and real life studies and applications of these things. So you see, if you put it all together, we come to this point in our lives where we say, wow, everything we're doing really unconsciously, psychologically, unconsciously, or whatever, is in service to this death anxiety or quelling this death anxiety. So that's the bottom line. The interesting part comes on how you may implement that death anxiety or terror management theory into your artwork, into your own kind of life. And that's what we're going to talk about on the next one before we have Sheldon come in and talk to us. We're going to talk a little bit about how I've implemented it and how you might be able to implement it and some of the ideas around it in your own artwork, in your photography, or whatever you might do. So, any questions on that? I don't think there is, but I'll just check to make sure. Hello, hola, la fotogaleria from Colombia. And Renzo, little late, but here he is from Ghent. Good. And Paul, yes, good to see you, brother. And Jean, he's here, East of France. Good day. Awesome. So technical. So let's shift gears here for a second. And I encourage you though to read that book. Look at Solomon's stuff and crew and their work, and look at this in the context of, personally, of course, but look at it in the context of creating art. What fodder you can draw off and what connections you can make and have it really support some interesting stuff. So much is there. Anyway, technical Q&A. Moto Yukai, I hope I'm saying his name right. I apologize if I'm not, but Moto Yukai from Japan, he wrote. And let's go through this. I'm just going to talk about each little piece. If you have something you want to throw in or talk about or add, let's do it. So he says the recipe basically uses your formula on collodion. He's going to ask several different questions, but he's just kind of setting it up. My solution uses cadmium bromide and ammonium iodide. Excellent. Perfect. So he's got both bromo-iodized collodion that he's using. Good. His average work temperature, 40%, 24. That's perfect. That's great. First of all, some basic. What specific changes occur when I increase or decrease collodion, the actual USB collodion? Ethanol, ether, cadmium bromide, ammonium iodide in the collodion solution. So let me tackle that in a little different way, Moto Yuki. Let's tackle it like this. You have what's called a binder. That's the word we use in English. The binder is the collodion. In that binder, we add additional solvents, ether and alcohol, to thin it out a little bit. And we add at least one salt, iodides and bromides usually. Iodides and bromides. Usually the bromo-iodized collodion is what we end up with. When you change this, the amount of collodion and you don't adjust for the salts or the solvents, it's kind of obvious there. The first thing that's going to happen is you're going to have a very runny solution, almost like water, right? So if you don't have enough collodion, or if you have too much collodion, it's thick or thin. Viscosity, the way it pours, it could be like water or it could be like gum. You want it in between. You want it where we have it. So the solvent, too much solvents make it runny. It doesn't work, and too little or too much iodides and bromides. If you have too many in a given amount of collodion, what that's going to do is it's going to eat your silver bath up. It's going to take on so much silver, you're going to be like, wow, I was at 8% the other day. I ran a few plates. Now I'm at 6%, right? It's going to consume, and you're not going to get any benefit from it either, right? There's a point there. We talked about this, like 3.5 grams. There's a point there where it doesn't do any good. In fact, the double decomposition process that takes place, you're just going to take up more silver out of your bath. That's what happens. Too much salt, if you will, too many iodides and bromides, eats your silver bath up. Too little, you're going to have poor function. You're going to have poor performance, right? You're not going to build those halogens on the plate. So it's kind of obvious there. So the balance we've struck is a 50-50 solvents and about total of, depending on your recipe, total of about 7%, 6 to 7% total in salts. Those are the balances. A lot of stuff can happen though. What if the silver nitrate is at 12% or 6%? That's another great question. Too much, too little? The silver content being too high on the first side, let's say, you're going to have problems with development first, and you may even have what I was thinking. You may even have problems with this double decomposition. If there's not enough room for all this stuff to happen, as it were, on that molecular level, you're going to have problems. And on top of that, you're going to waste product above and beyond anything here. You're going to waste products, right? Salt, silver, collodion, all that stuff. So it's usually not too much silver. You can go up into the 10% range pretty easily. But you're actually going to get better results with an 8% or a 7% silver bath, most generally, depending on your collodion, how iodized it is and whatnot. But generally speaking, if you have too little silver nitrate in your bath, the same thing's going to happen. Just like too little salts, you're not going to have the material there to transfer those in and make those AGI, AGBR, silver iodide and silver bromide. Or if it does, it will do it weak. It won't perform the way it should with the compounds to the ratios and the solvents adjusted and all that. So one's physical, moving the material around, and the rest are kind of balanced with the chemical processes that have to happen. Mainly speaking of double decomposition, that's what we're really talking about. I'm not really sure what you mean by make a thick emulsion on a glass plate. If you want to make a thick emulsion on a glass plate, if you want that creamy white stuff that you can't even see when you pull it out of the bath, jack your iodides up. Increase your iodides in your collodion. You'll have all that milky thick stuff you want. But you may also, in turn, have other problems. So again, it's a balance. It's like, well, how much meat can I put on this sandwich? Man, you can put as much meat on that sandwich as you want. I don't know if you're going to get your mouth around it though, right? So there's a whole bunch of issues dealing with adjusting. Some of them have wide latitude, right? Like we throw in some acid in the developer, we throw a splash of this and that, whatever it is. A lot of these compounds will have latitude. Some of these don't have much latitude. Salts in collodion, solvents in collodion, sometimes even you want to have that ratio right, and silver bath content. These work together the way they do because of the amount of material you're using in relation to what you're doing. So thick, if you want a thick emulsion, up your iodide content. You'll get a thick emulsion. Do I need to increase the ratio of collodion or change the ratio of ethanol and ether to collodion? Well, in my book, I state clearly there that you come with plain USP collodion at about, 70% ether, 20 some odd percent ethanol or alcohol, and 4 to 8% nitrocellulose. So that comes to you that way. We add a little more ether, a little more alcohol, more solvents to thin that out so it flows over the plate well. That balance is 50-50 for the external, right? And so if you're using, 80 mils and 80 mils or 160 mils, 160 mils, depending on the quantity of collodion you're making, you're going to balance that out. Now, in dry conditions, you can up the alcohol content. You can up the water content is basically what you're doing. Water and collodion, we've said this endlessly, it's injurious to collodion. That's what the old literature says. But if you have the right balance there, you can keep your collodion wet longer. It doesn't dry out as fast. So if you're working in high dry environments like I do a lot of the times, I'll want my collodion a little more wet, a little more alcohol, a little more distilled water, whatever it is. And that will raise that, it will increase the time of the plates not drying out. That's what increased alcohol or added water in the salts. Jeffrey wrote me and said there's a publication that's saying to add 5 mils of distilled water when you're mixing the salts. I'd say as little as possible. 2 or 3 mils. This is about double that. That may have been for a high environment or a dry area to work with. You can do that. Most of the time, if you're in a humid area and you add 10 mils of water and 250 mils of collodion, you're going to get striations, and you're going to get the chambered lines, and you're going to get all that happening. A lot of times not, though. It just depends on your environment. So there's a lot of variance here. That's the only ratio that you have to do is follow that. And you do have a little latitude in the solvents too, if you don't want to use as much or more, if you want to use more. Silver nitrate, do I need to change any of the following values? 8% is great, perfect. pH 4, you're making positives, great. And the specific gravity is in relation to the percentage of silver, so that looks great. 0.08 seems a little higher than 8%, but that, either way, that's fine. I just go with percentage. 8% is good. And that's with an iodized collodion, right? You remember, real quick, you remember this, right? So using a bath of lower silver and higher pH for the higher iodized, highly iodized collodion, and 8.8, 9% and acidic for the not so iodized. That, if you remember that kind of motto goes along with the same thing of, do I need to change any of the following on that silver nitrate? No, you really don't. That looks good. Soaking time, 3 to 4 minutes is fine. I would do that by visual inspection. Just make sure the rivulets are gone, and that's great. Developer, how about the amount of ferrous sulfate? Motoyuki, if you are using what I think you're using, I would go with between 25 and 30 grams for a liter. So 2.5 to 3% on the iron, and check it out to see where you fall. Make some small batches and test them out and see what works better. And then lead up. How to make silver shine ambrotype glass plate? How about the ratio of ether and alcohol? No, that wouldn't have anything to do with it. If you want to make your silver shine, I've talked about this a lot on this show. If you want to make your silver shine, do one of 2 things, or maybe one of 3 things you can do. 1, put a little bit of sodium nitrate, put a little bit of saltpeter in your developer. Put a little bit of copper sulfate in your developer, CuSO4. Those are restrainers, and they'll brighten the silver up big time. And I think down here you ask as well too, lower, we'll get to it. Use nitric acid in your developer instead of glacial acetic acid. Those will all, and you can even cool your silver bath down. If you don't want that warm tone on your plates, add some nitric acid to your silver bath, drop your pH down a little bit. That'll cool everything off. You'll be more of a cool silver tone on your plates. But shiny, bright, snappy, throw some saltpeter, sodium nitrate in it, throw some copper sulfate in the developer if you want. Watch your exposures. Every single image I see with copper sulfate in the developer is blowing out. All the details are gone in the highlights. So be careful about that. And then developer. How about amount of ferrous sulfate? You asked that. Is it better? I say 25 to 30 grams a liter, 2.5 to 3%. Is it better to use other acids? Yes. No, it's not necessarily better. It depends on what you're after. Try nitric acid in your developer and see if you like that. It'll definitely cool it down. It'll definitely shine it up. How about adding silver nitrate or potassium nitrate solution to developer? Now, that's an interesting question. Adding silver nitrate, not potassium nitrate. That's a byproduct in your silver bath. Silver nitrate to the developer. Now, what you're talking about there is when we redevelop negatives, we'll use pyrogallic acid and drop a few drops of silver nitrate from our bath into that to redevelop negatives. But adding it to positives, it's not. You're going to add density, but ironically enough, if you're doing an ambrotype, you want the exact opposite. You want a very, very thin negative backed with something black, and reflected light to see the image. You're not going for density where you want to look through it as a negative with transmitted light and build that density up to print. So a little bit interesting question, but you can follow up with me if this doesn't make sense for you. Fixing solution, time and concentration. Well, yeah, you're going to have to use hypo. I doubt you can get KCN in Japan. Maybe you can, I don't know. But this came in the first of the week, and then the last couple of days I've had some more questions come in. These damn black spots that you see everybody posting about on their fix, and they're using this sodium thiosulfate, they're not washing long enough, and then people will chime in and talk about, you know, pinholes. Let me explain this real quick, guys, so you know the difference here. I got online and I tried to explain this, but I don't think I did a very good job. Yes, thank you, Pablo. If you could talk a bit about the infamous melting image. Absolutely, I will. So you have, when we talk about black dots, in fact, you know what? Let's just do this. When we talk about black dots, what we're talking about is one of two things, generally. And I want to paint with a very broad brush here so I don't get email about this. I'm painting with a very broad brush. Generally speaking, black dots are going to come from one of two things. Can I stop? I got to stop this sharing because I'm going to share my screen in a different place here. Share screen, window. What plate? There we go. So here's what's posted on my Facebook group there. So I see these often. And you're going to see, and let me describe something here. Here's the difference. This is a fix issue. This is a sodium thiosulfate washing, mixing, fixing issue here. These are particles that bind up with the silver, free silver on the plate, right? That don't get washed off and then embed down into the collodion. Why are some bigger and smaller? That's the size of the structure of the fix, the crystal, okay? Pinholes that you get from a highly iodized silver bath, a whole different scenario from using a highly iodized silver bath, running a bunch of negatives, doing a bunch of, you know, NH4I work. Those are small, consistent, and all through the image. They will be as consistent as you can get. Not like this. The smaller ones look like pinholes. The larger ones tell me that this is sodium thiosulfate, that problems with sodium thiosulfate. Then we get on to the boiling silver bath. You guys know this, man. If you're boiling or heating silver bath, I strongly recommend that you stop. I strongly recommend that you look at what silver fulminates are. And if you are heating up your silver baths, or boiling as they say, it does work great. They used it in the 19th century, absolutely. But I would ask you, how are you mitigating the formation of fulminate? That's my question to you. If you're boiling or heating your silver bath, what precautions are you taking to prevent silver fulminate from being formed? That's the big question. I asked it this morning, and the guy ditched on me. He didn't answer me how he was mitigating that problem. So, but I'm just saying, if you do that, man, I hope you know what you're doing, because, man, if you're not set up and you're not equipped with fume hoods, exhaust, PPE, personal protective equipment, organic chemistry knowledge, safety, industrial hygiene knowledge, all that stuff, and you're out there willy-nilly with a stainless steel pan in your backyard, think twice, think twice. So here we go. Back to the screen here. So, and then he says, fixing solution. You're using sodium thiosulfate. You're using 150 grams to a liter. You do 10 minutes at 24. Yes, that's good. 15% is good. You're going to have to wash. I think you're saying you fix for 10 minutes, which is fine. But you're going to have to wash those plates. in running water for at least a half an hour. At least running water for at least a half an hour. And the higher you get in the percentages to get those warm tones with sodium thiosulfate, the more wash you're going to have to make have happen. So keep in mind, those black dots bind with the silver. What's fix, right? Fix is to remove all the unexposed silver. So the fix goes on there, binds up with the silver, and if it gets bound up and gets into the collodion and hangs there and it's not washed off, in a couple of days, 3 days, 1 day, 10 days, 2 weeks, I don't know what it is, boom, black dots everywhere. So black dot syndrome. So I hope that answers that question. Jeffrey says, Ari Pinhole had the same problem from overusing the same hypo. Now use fresh hypo after 3 to 5 plates. That's the best. It's the best solution. Plus washing, of course. I mean, that doesn't even need to be said. Washing is always a problem. So Moto Yuki, I hope, number one, I said your name right. Forgive me if I didn't. And number two, if you have any more questions, holler at me, drop me another email. I hope that helped. Let's go on to Pablo, mi amigo. Pablo said, uh-oh, he poured varnish on a plate and it melted away. Where's Jean? Jean, he posted, hey, I'm going to go back here. He posted a great, oh, here we go. Mark, how you doing, brother? Quinn, can you use hypo clearing agent? Yes, you can. Hypo clearing agent, you know, back in the old film days, you can do that. The only problem, and it's pretty inert. The only problem is I'm not sure. I've never used that. I don't use hypo thiosulfate only in prints, so I don't know. I've used it on plates, of course, but I haven't done any experiments with it. But I've heard from people using it that it works to some degree, but not completely on the plate. And it could be due to the plastic nature, the nitrocellulose, or binding that stuff up. And the hypoclear though does help. It does. The hypoclear goes in and binds the thiosulfate up that's bound up with the silver. That's exactly what it does. It helps get those difficult silver off, because you're going to turn black, right? If you don't fix plates, it's going to go black, silver sulfite. So it's a good point, Mark, and you can try that. If you're not using KCN, try that. That's a good point to use that. Let's go over and share. I should have left that open. You just have a constant feed to FaceBag, huh? Seems like everything happens on FaceBag. Wet plate collodion photography. And let's go over and see Jean's post here. Pablo, I'm going to play this so everybody can see. Where? Oh, no, that's in chemical pictures. Sorry, I'm in the wrong group. I have too many groups. I shouldn't have this many groups, guys. I don't know how that happened. Wet plate collodion. Here we go. Chemical pictures. Pablo's post and Jean. Here we go. Here, this will be good. Can I share this? Share this screen back to FaceBag. And let's look at Jean's little video here. This is in the group, collodion group from France. I told him it was called soft focus. I like your music, Jean. Here we go. And if it's really prominent, it will already be sliding off the plate. Uh-oh, he's got a frowny face. Let's see. Oh, look at that soft focus. He moved the camera. That's not dissolving collodion. He moved the camera. Oh, Jean, you need a head brace. You need a head brace, brother. Okay. So let's talk about, thank you for that video, by the way. Conde photographer, Norwich. Hey, UK, good to see you. Welcome, welcome. So let's talk about what's happened there. on page, if you have Chemical Pictures, my book, page 99, right at the top, talks about dissolving and melting images when you varnish. Very common problem. Real quickly, what happens when you mix? You can have old plain USP collodion. This can happen too. It doesn't have to just be NH4I that breaks that nitrocellulose down. But when you mix your collodion up, your plain USP collodion, and it's usually with the more unstable salt, which is the NH4I, it breaks down faster, the ammonium iodide. That breaks down the nitrocellulose. Remember, there's 4 to 8% nitrocellulose in the collodion. That cotton, after a while, when it gets iodized and red, it starts breaking that cotton down a little bit. Now you pour it on a plate, you make your exposure, you do your development, you wash. Now you got to overheat. Now you go to varnish, you pour your varnish in, which is basically alcohol is the carrier, is the binder, and the tree sap and the lavender oil, or some type of plasticizer. But the alcohol in there hits that nitrocellulose and just melts it. The nitrocellulose isn't strong enough. Oh, Pablo's got one here. Let's put you up there, Pablo. Oh yeah, there you go. Whoop. Yep. Oh no. Yeah. It happens to all of us. It happens to all of us. So older red collodion and sometimes fresh varnish, or if you're using 96% alcohol or higher, you want to tamper that down. Even 95% on the old red collodion. I'll take 250 mils of varnish. Watch my mouth here. I'll take 250 mils of varnish and knock it down with 10 drops of distilled water, and then try another plate. If I'm using old red collodion and I know my varnish is hot, or you see my methodology. I use test tubes. So I'll pour varnish out in a test tube. I'll put 3 drops of water in it and then varnish the plate. That holds back that alcohol. It dilutes the alcohol basically, and it holds back from destroying that nitrocellulose. Just be careful that you don't put too much water in there, because varnish hates water, just hates it. So be careful. Linda says, yeah, it's shiny though, Pablo. It's shiny but melted. Very common. But I'm glad you asked that, and I'm glad you reminded me to bring that up here, because it's a very common problem. Just keep in mind, if you never want to have that happen, see, for me, I go through so much collodion. A lot of these problems I don't have, because when I get in collodion mode, liters on liters, right? I mean, I burn through this stuff. So a lot of times I won't have that problem. Have I had it? Yes. I had a 40 by 50, beautiful portrait. Heat it up, varnish it, 250 mils of varnish out on it, just slid off. Makes you sick. Renzo says, can you distort the double decomposition match between the silver bath and the collodion just by adding silver to your silver bath? Yeah, Renzo, you know what? Renzo, look at this. Check this out. You're not distorting the double decomposition process. Here's what he's asking. I got you, Renzo. He's asking, are you going to screw up that the salts being converted into halogens in the silver bath, right? They go from ammonium iodide to silver iodide, cadmium bromide to silver bromide, AgI, AgBr. He's asking, can you screw that up just by adding silver to your silver bath? Yes, you can. And I'll tell you why or how. What he's asking about is the very thing that we went over a couple of weeks ago. And when we talk about this, Renzo, this is what we're talking about. What you did is people either 99% of the time, people run out of collodion and they've been using the same bath for a few weeks or months. They make new collodion, then all of a sudden their plates are fogged. Remember we talked about the iodide balance, a highly iodized. What kind of bath does that need? It needs a low silver content and a high pH. What about slightly iodized collodion? High silver content and low pH. Those are the two things that are going to balance out that double decomposition process, that whole formation of the halides. You're right. That's a good question, Renzo, and you're absolutely correct. One of the things that you can do with that is take your silver bath out and add a little bit of distilled water to it, maybe 10%, and see if you get any of the blue iodides precipitating out of that. And if you do, you might want to add some more silver in that and balance that out. And I don't know what condition your collodion's in, though, but it's a good question. Fair question for sure. Aaron says, happened to me last week during a workshop when I was supposed to show them how it's done. Pretty embarrassing, but quite educational. Yeah, that's good, Aaron. That's that. Hey, you know what? If you got to let the ego go in this stuff sometimes. You just like, wow, you're at the mercy of so many spinning wheels that when people come up to you and say, I'm a master of wet collodion. Well, give it a couple of months and let's see if you're still a master after a couple of months. Because there's stuff that comes up in this process that you just, oh, what? You know, I get email all the time. I was going on for 6 or 8 months and look at the images. They're beautiful. And boom, you hit a wall. Nothing works. What's wrong? Those are the kinds of things that I try on the technical portion of this show. I try to help people with and give my experience, try to give some of the science and those kinds of things. But that's really good, Aaron. Not good that it happened to you in the workshop, but kind of good that it happened to you in the workshop. We're all human, right? The most fallible person is right here. So good. Testing tomorrow, Renzo. Good. That's good. Let us know. Let me know. Come back next week. Because we always like to kind of follow up with these experiments and see what people end up doing. Sometimes they follow through. Most of the time they don't. That's okay. I don't pay people enough to hang out that long. Before we go on to Aaron, is there any questions technically that we can, because we want to give Aaron free reign here. Worked out in the end. Yeah, good. It always does. It always works out in the end. The most embarrassing thing you can do, and I think I said this a couple of weeks ago. I said I want to give I've done hundreds of these demos and workshops and public lectures and all this crap. And so I said, I want to give you a couple of tips and tricks because people that week were emailing me like 3 or 4 different little TV shows or a commercial or some homemade video or something, and people doing demonstrations out in public. And I gave them the advice of, if you're going to teach workshops, if you're going to do public stuff, you need to know what the problems are that can happen. And it's okay if they happen in a workshop or a public demo. In fact, sometimes it's really good because then you can actually show some of these things are difficult to reproduce. So you can actually show the people how to fix it. The problem is if it happens and you don't know why it happened, that becomes a problem. So that was one of my little pieces of advice for people to, before you go out there and saying, hey, I want to get on TV and show my stuff and all this, know your chemistry, know what's up. All right. No questions? Good. Let's give Aaron the floor. Aaron, can you unmute yourself there? And get your, yeah, there you go. Yeah, good. Look at how dark Aaron is. You may not recognize Aaron, but he is on the cover of my 2013 book. When I was up in Gothenburg, I made a portrait of him. And that plate now, I think, resides in Amsterdam, if I remember correctly. There it is. Aaron's got a copy of it right there. Beautiful. Look at that. Beautiful. I love that. Now, that's ancient history. That was 2013. That's so long ago. All right, brother, you want to take over? You want to share your screen? And we'll get it up here, and I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Let's share the screen and get this working.
Yes.
Let me just.
You go ahead. I'm going to answer this one question from Kondo here while you're doing that. Conde photographer. Sorry. Hi, Quinn. I read somewhere that using EDTA in water, we don't need to use deionized water to make film chemistry. Does this apply to wet collodion? That's a great question. So EDTA, boy, this is an acid, and the name on it's this long. I use it to clear dichromates from paper in oil printing. That's a great question. I do not know the answer to that. I don't know. I'll look into that, or you look into that and let us know. Actually, that's a great question. He or she is asking, using this compound. Now, EDTA binds up chromium, right? That's why it's so good. It binds up chromium and takes it off the paper or takes it out of the gelatin, in this case for oil prints. And he says, or she said, he or she says, in water, use this. We don't need to use deionized water. God, that I'm going to look into that. You got my head scratching now. Yeah, that's a good question. One more. Deidre, should we drop the percentage of silver when working with older right negative collodion? I'd drop. We watch all the time, but don't say hi as often. No worries, Deidre. I know who you are. I know who both of you are there. That's great. Yes, I would probably, if you're using a highly iodized collodion, a red collodion, as you said, yeah, correct. I wouldn't go with 9%. I'd try to drop that at least to 8. I'd try to drop it. And if you could get it in the mid 7s somewhere, you'll have better results. You'll keep the void areas clean, blah, 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 all kinds of stuff. So yes, good question. Thank you, Deidre. And I think Troy is with you too, right? Deidre and Troy, I hope. Hi, Quinn. I don't know your name. I'm sorry. I sent you a private message, but the question is interesting for the group. I'll rewatch later. Was busy today. Oh, I didn't get your message. Can I get it next week? Maybe I can get it next week. So yes, thank you. Brother, all you, Aaron.
All right. So I'm just putting up this framed version of the picture you saw, and I'll try to get you some kind of background for this.
Please.
I did this a couple of years ago, 2018. This project's called SANCTUM. And I kind of actually, from the start of it, didn't really have, I usually have a lot of more concepts and thoughts ready before I start this. But now I just know that I wanted to do something occult. Because in the last couple of years, actually kind of ties back to the whole death denial thing now, because when my mom passed away 2014, so about after that I really started getting interested in more woo stuff, if you will.
Yeah.
Like, because she was a bit new age, looking for really answers everywhere besides from the scientific world. So I even went with her to a spiritual hospital in Brazil once, when we tried to heal her soul that way. But kind of, I was really skeptical. I was also really skeptical. But like a couple of years after she passed away, I kind of took over her interest in this other side, so to speak. And like starting to listen to podcasts and read about mystery and myth and stuff. And I've been really into this side of the, like, a really kind of a big side of like Western culture, but it's been hiding in the shadows for centuries. And secret societies and occult beliefs have been around for centuries. It's just that they've been like not the mainstream. They've been hidden from,
like Knights Templar, that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And like there's a various now known, Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn.
Yeah,
is one of these societies. This was founded in the 18th century.
Yeah,
presumably like draw their knowledge from further back, and all of it came from, a lot of it is just like originated from the Egyptian mythologies and things. So at least, this where my whole interest in this side of the cultural spectrum is drawn me to this project. And the Nox Sanctum, the title I've chosen, is a holy night in Latin, and it's trying to just to emphasize that it's the like meaningful and holy. I've been inspired by Christian iconography as well in these pictures.
Yes.
And but like the night part is because it's the hidden, the occult,
the dark. Yeah.
So I can go ahead and show you what came out of it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Actually, it started sort of like from when I started this. It was kind of backwards because I was in contact with a gallery and they liked my stuff. I wanted to show some kind of wet collodion things, and I had some like darker images that really fitted that gallery. And I made only not a version of this picture, not exactly this one, but a similar version that I showed them from the start. And then we were, and I said, I want to show you something like this, but I want to make a whole project for it. And they went with it. And then, I had a set deadline and like 4 months or something to come up with.
Sure. What size of plates are these, Aaron?
These are half plates, so 12 by 16.5 centimeters.
They're half plates, you say?
Half plates, yeah.
Yeah, cool. Beautiful format.
Pretty, yeah, I really like it. It's pretty small.
Beautiful.
Let's just walk through them. It's not a very big series, but here they are. This one, yeah.
Beautiful, yeah.
Start. And let's see. I'm just gonna go back to the other one.
Oh yeah, there you go. Wow, I like how none of them have faces. You did a really good job with this subtle light. Those are difficult things to do, They're difficult to get those right.
Yeah, and I can really, like on this one, the weird stuff that happens with collodion really goes well with the subject.
Yeah.
Because these streaks here on his face, those are some cleaning issues from the glass. And these are all done on clear glass, and I have the back side, the emulsion side covered with asphalt.
Oh, you have really beautiful color on them then, huh?
Thanks. Yeah. And they're all playing with this. Let's go on. Some of these are self-portraits. Yeah.
Boy, too bad Gerard isn't in here. We've lost our Dutch people. They don't want to talk about death, but Gerard would. Gerard had one similar to this, like a little Jesus thing or something.
All right.
The round, iconography. There you go. That's a vulnerable, yeah. Wow. And where are you getting these blades from, Aaron? These swords?
Oh yeah, that's the sword. Actually, it's from. I've inherited it from my grandfather.
Very nice.
Yep.
Did he make it?
No, I don't think so. I think he bought it as a souvenir. He was in Palestine as a UN soldier in the 50s or something. So I think he bought it as a souvenir or something there. It's like I did some research about swords. I think it's an Ottoman Khilji or something.
It looks Middle Eastern. It does, yeah.
And there's some nudity in these, but I think it goes well with the subject.
Wow. Yeah. Boy, you got the iconography down, though. Yeah.
This one I call. So I have two plates that are on aluminium, and these were the ones that started the whole thing. This one is one of them. So I call it the Primus Motor.
15 centimeters square.
No, it's a bit smaller actually. 5 by 5 inches, 12 by 12 and a half.
Oh.
12 and a half.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. There you
go. Two of these.
The Holy Grail.
Small plates of Holy Grails. Yeah. And then there's this guy.
And
this is a bigger one actually. I had two pieces that are, or 3 pieces in this size as well, and this is 10 by 12 inch.
Nice.
So a little bit bigger.
It looks like it's on aluminum.
Glass.
It's on glass or aluminum?
It's on glass.
Oh, nice. And what kind of animal is that?
It's a beaver, I think.
Beaver.
Yeah.
Lost his front teeth. He's not taking down any more trees.
No, he's not. And then there's the Holy Grail again in the big.
Yeah, you're really using very Sally Manish-like. You're really using the artifacts for the mystery, the effects, the darkness, those kinds of. Just look at the sweeps and the lines up top there, guys, coming out of that cup. I mean, what else?
Those are amazing.
What else can you get using that? I mean, again, it's hard.
I did like have a piece of paper and I waved it over there in the top to get like a smoky effect.
Yeah.
But then these streaks came also to like emphasize it even more.
Yeah.
So
it looks like something. This cup is being filled with something from above.
Yeah.
Very nice.
And then there's the last one, the Kimitit. I think it's called this one. The other ones don't have title. This is just Nox Sanctum number 1 to 1.
Wow! And she's got the sickle there, ready to get rid of your death anxiety.
The Reaper.
Yeah, coming to put all those concerns away, right?
Yeah.
Wow! Very interesting.
That's that's it. I can show you this one too when I how the amount were displayed. So I worked with a kind of
a cross.
The cross thing with how you.
That is interesting.
It's pretty nice. A gallery with black walls also. So it was really,
yeah. How did the public respond?
Well, really well actually. I got people were. The ones that saw it were mostly really liked it. It was like, and I played some really like nice ambient music that were really like getting in the same kind of mood. So it was really like going into this church almost when they came in. And they're pretty high up also, so it's a bit like you're looking at this kind of. Yeah,
that's what I was going to say. The metaphor of looking up, and yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. I love the physicality of exhibitions. If you can, I think Cyprus, Dimitrios, when he was on here, he said his goal was to make the largest ambrotype in the world, or Guinness Book World Record or something. And we got we got talking. I said, why do you want to go so large, or what is it that the large plates do for you? He says they're just big, And I gave the example of some of my most favorite images are quarter plate, black glass quarter plate. They're really tiny little things. Yeah. And I gave the example of having that in a gallery and having people come really close and get up really tight and look at that, right? That intimate kind of feeling versus stepping way back from a large print or a large image. And I'm always interested in why people pick the size of or the formats they choose to work in. I prefer small myself. I prefer whole plate, but half plate, I've made so much work on half plate. Will says, I like the mysterious vibe to those images. Very nice. Very good. Yes, I do too. I like the whole presentation of mixing these almost weirdly enough, sacrilege in a weird way. I don't know, and I know you're not talking about any specific religion, but you are, like you said, you're kind of cross-pollinating here with this imagery of when I look, I didn't want to look at too much of it before you showed it, because I like to look at it with everybody else, but the immediate thing I got was Knights Templar. I don't know if it's the sword or just the plain iconography, just the whole vibe of it. But I'm curious to know, what is it that this cathartic or catharsis wise or therapeutically, what does this do for you? Or what did you get out of it? You said the public responded well. What did you get out of it as the artist or the creator of it?
Yeah, good question. Well,
I mean, we make bodies of work to tell a story, right? And so what did that story do to you, or how did that story change you in presenting that narrative to the public, or how did that work?
I think it worked like manifesting these. For me, it's, I think, this interest, this drive towards the metaphysical and the untangible, the otherworldly. This kind of worked like manifesting that side of me, and like because it's really, I have a few people that I can talk to this stuff, talk to about this kind of stuff, but it's kind of hard to describe most of the time. So it's really like I think a way to like manifest and show this without having to talk that much. You just make these images and like have them be the voice, like instead of and it's I mean, they're kind of some of them are kind of vulnerable, and they're kind of some of them are kind of powerful. So I think that also shows this process of searching for meaning, or I mean, I think about how the like terror management theories that we talked about earlier, how it like religion is really like how a way to suppress the your death anxiety, and this thing I think gets I'm losing my words here. My English is
it's okay. It's
not unpractical.
No, it's great.
You know what I mean?
Yes, I do. Here's the thing. Did you feel that, and you're absolutely correct, that one of the terror management that we've been talking about, one of the big factors or the big points of that is to find these buffers, as Becker calls them. So in the midst of you making these images about, they're kind of about death in a lot of ways. They're at least serious about what happens after you're not here, possibly, or whatever. But by doing that, what you're doing is you're creating that wall, that buffer, to allow you to explore these things. And that's what we're really going to talk about next week, is how do we incorporate some of these ideas, and especially if you have something so direct like this. I mean, I could project all over these images, but they're your images, so I don't do that. I won't do that, but they're your images. And so while you're creating them, you're absolutely correct. That buffer that you created for terror management, dealing with the very idea of death and having lost your mother, and those ideas floating around in your head. You'll probably hear Sheldon talk about, I think it was when he was around 8 years old, his mom told him to say, come and say goodbye to grandma because you're never going to see her again. And this whole idea started rumbling around in his head at 8 years old. Nobody really knows at what age human beings become aware of this knowledge. But once you become aware of it, some people obsess about it. Some people just demand that they put walls up and never deal with it. Most people do that. But these artists, and my point is this, Aaron, artists have these unique abilities and even gifts, if you will, to take certain tools, whether it's cameras or, you know, knives or axes or sculpting tools or materials or whatever. They take these tools and this material and they create meaning out of it. And they also create, you know, the buffer zone, but they also create a catalyst to talk about these things. And I think that's what art, work like this, ideas like Becker's and Solomon's, and then presenting them to the general public so the general public can get an idea. This stuff is very deep for people. This isn't your afternoon, let's talk about the weather stuff, you know? So presenting artwork in a way that says, hey, look, I made this for this reason. This is the motivation behind it. These are the ideas behind it. And then let the people consume it, of course. But having those thought out and thought through can be very cathartic or therapeutic for the artist. And I think that's what art's allowed me to do, is get closer to dealing with these big questions, or at least tackling them and finding resources for that. But that's really good. Yeah. Lida, she's right there in your country there. Beautiful picture, and mysterious, super nice effects on them. Love, yeah, they are nice effects on them. Love the picture with the man with the halo and the white eyes. That was you. Was that you?
Yeah, actually, it's kind of, I can put them on here. This one, I think. The white eyes.
Yeah.
It's kind of a funny story how I managed to make these self-portraits, because I was alone in the studio.
Yeah.
And I just had this like dark, I had the studio then was no window lights or anything. It was in the basement. So I just put up all the lights, and I had them connected to, all the lights connected to a single outlet that I could switch on and off with my foot. And I had that placed right where my feet was. So I just shut all the lighting down, loaded the camera, and took off the lens cap and everything. And then I just exposed with my toe on turning the lights on and off. It's kind of a creative way to fix this self-portrait situation.
Behind the scenes the making of.
Yeah.
Cool. Very, very good. Yeah.
So that such situation made these two pictures. And this one with the little developer hole here in the side.
Yeah.
Reminds me of kind of a Jesus.
They stuck the sword inside, right? Yeah. See all those little metaphors. Did you talk about that? Did you talk about the defects, those artifacts in your statement, or did you tell people about that?
Yeah, I did. When I didn't talk about it in the on paper on like a statement, but when people when I showed the pictures, they of course asked a lot of questions like, "What is this? What's that?" And, you know, people aren't very exposed to what collodion images in general, so they're kind of curious about the whole.
Awesome, very good.
So
that's awesome. We appreciate you sharing that with us. Anybody have anything else for Aaron? Well, I only have a couple things left here. Very nice. I didn't see all that work, so it's really great to be.
I have another one. One of these pictures. Oh yeah, I have this cup also in the bigger format. So I had three big formats on the show, but I sold it before I photographed it. So I haven't.
Nice. That's a king's problem to have.
Yeah, but it's kind of, I think both of these, both the cups here and the skull had the same title. It's just a veil.
Yes. Yeah.
Veil number 1, 2, 3. So I think there's a kind of a symbolical meaning that the body is just the vessel for your soul, sort of thing, and the same as with the cup that holds the life.
Yeah,
and those are the Hermetic tradition also. You know, in the symbols and all of this, the cup is the.
Yes, those are the things that I would write about. about these images. Like, here's the vessel, here's the soul leaving the vessel, here's the iconography and the symbolization of all these things. Those are really, that's the story. That's where that's where the people will really start to connect and say, wow, I am involved with this. I do feel a connection with that. But man, that's really good work, Aaron. I never got to see any of that. So I'm happy you came on here and shared it with us.
Thanks.
Anything else for Aaron? We can, let's see. Can I go back here? That's that. Okay, I'm going to put that up, and I'm going to put this over here, and we'll do, we'll try one more time here. Yeah, that's about, yeah, great job, Aaron. Good. Yeah, give him a hand there. He did a good job with that. Holy Night, very good job. So let's just do this real quick just to get it out. Yeah, so next week, let's tie some of this stuff in with making artwork. Let's open it up and see if we can get some participation and talk about some of these ideas. No great surprise here. If you haven't read that book, that's the big one. Yeah, so the lesson contained within The Worm at the Core suggests one should confront mortality in order to live an authentic life, as the Epicureans and the Stoics suggested many centuries ago. That's the key. I think that's what could do a lot of good for artists, is the authenticity portion. This week, Jean sent me a great video. I'll recommend that next week. But this week, The Art of Dying, the BBC 4. If you're British, excuse me, if you're British, you probably might have seen this, but it's a very good look at a human being dealing with, he's not sick or anything, Dan Cruikshank. He's a journalist. I don't know what he is, a documentarian maybe, I don't know, but it's a really good example of watching, and they tie art in here as well too, of watching someone deal with the knowledge of this up front, of dying and death. And he's not sick or anything. It's just like any of us. So that's what I recommend. It's on YouTube. You can go over there and watch that, no problem. And I'll definitely recommend next week at Jean's. Here's a little clip of it.
What are you worried about? Getting there on time? Winning that promotion? Being alone? We live our lives obsessed by our hopes, our dreams, and failures. But in spite of our different paths, we all share the same destiny. And that destiny is death. Death is the greatest mystery of all our lives. Most of us prefer to deny it will ever happen. But I want to do something now I've never done before. I want to face up to death. In this age of uncertainty, I want to see if art can help me in the face of death. I want to learn from the deaths that have happened in my own family. And I want to find out if art can help me prepare for my own inevitable end.
So you heard him there. He says, I want to know if art can help me. Check it out and see if you're into that kind of thing or not. All I can do is recommend. This is what I do. Really, the last few weeks, I really kind of just shared openly what I do. This is what I do. I study, I read, I look, I think, I write. I try to coordinate my interests, my authentic interests, with some kind of good, solid information that the public can bring in and consume, that other artists can kind of get motivated by. I know I live off of other artists' ideas and works, and I get motivated by that. And so it's really important that we share these other things. I mean, again, technical is great and all that, but to share these deeper concepts and to build work or to make work, find out, I always say, art with a capital A is something that's in your heart, in your head, something weighing on you, a question, a concern, a love, a hate, something that you've got to kind of get out there and share. And in order to do that, you've got to make sense of it. And in order to make sense, you've got to have fodder and input and those kinds of things. And I shared this thing the other day about getting an advanced degree in the arts on Facebook. And it was a picture of the front cover of my transcripts. And the degree says wet plate collodion photography, 19th century historic studies. And it's a graduate degree. It's an MFA. And I posted it up online to talk about regret, talk about authentic lives, talk about, I hear so many people get degrees or get educated. And here in America, you have to pay for that stuff big time with loans. So they take out loans and they get debt and they regret it. They get a degree in, in art, and they're working as an accountant over here for, $15 an hour or something. And I hear a lot of regret. I hear a lot of, God, I wish I wouldn't have done that. Oh, I'm weighed down with this. So I posted that up there just to say, look, if one thinks through this stuff and you have a goal and you have a determination to get to somewhere or do something, the first start of that is planning it. And that's what I've tried to share with you. I wanted to share some of these ideas, and Solomon Sheldon will make it completely clear in a couple of weeks. But I wanted to share some of these ideas in the context of what this is, and then bring it in and start to incorporate art, our personal work lives, our personal how we create, what do we do, where do we get feedback, At some point in time, it would be really nice to have a small group of people working in, I don't care what discipline you work in, but coming in and not having some guy up here rambling and showing slides, but come in and share work and get feedback from other people, share ideas and hear other people's ideas and feedback, have critiques on ongoing work. The biggest problem with artists, I think, is they don't get enough feedback. That's why education is so great for a lot of people. It's an environment that you're all on the same page. You come in, you share work, you think about ideas, you're exposed to new ideas, you're exposed to new artists, people turn you on to all kinds of stuff. So at the end of the day, though, the idea for this series on death denial and death anxiety is to help you, number one, help you as a human being understand why things go on in the world like they do. Why do we treat so many different other people so horribly? Why do we think, we need to, get on top of people and beat them down? Why do we even treat our neighbors bad? Or why do we, you can see the slightest lashing out from death anxiety in your everyday life. It doesn't have to be genocide. Just a remark. You say something, it's challenged that person's death denial, and they'll come back at you with a snarty remark, right? Could be ego-based. That's another death denial. You're challenging. My death anxiety is quelled by my ego or my money or my stuff or my job or my title or whatever it is. And once you challenge that, boom, death anxiety. So there's a lot of fodder here for artists. I mean, if there's any mainspring of fodder, this is it. This is it. And you can tie everything into it, anything into it. I'm trying to give you the basis of it. And so I hope you've enjoyed what we've done so far. And I hope Solomon Sheldon will come in here and knock your socks off. He's a great guy. He's a funny guy. And he's incredibly brilliant. I mean, these guys, all three of them, incredibly brilliant. These are the guys, these are our Einsteins and our Freuds of the day, right? And they don't get recognition, and they'll be, if we last long enough down the road, they'll be acknowledged, but they'll be long gone. We all will. We want to address this stuff now and hopefully give you some good material to work with. What did I feel learning about denial of death makes you open up more? You know what, Linda? Guy, you know what? Well, I'll show you some of this next week. We're going to talk about, so what are the solutions kind of thing, right? There really aren't any solutions, but you nailed it. You nailed it. And you'll hear Sheldon say the same thing. Be close, live a fully authentic. Death denial and death anxiety makes you quiver, makes you regress. Opening up to it and dealing with it, you can live. And Becker talks about an authentic life. Becker talks about the irony of this intelligence makes us so we can't live a full life until we get over it. And Albert Camus wrote in the margins of his book there, he said, come to terms with your death and you can overcome anything. And so that's what he means by that, what Linda's saying. Open up more in life, you appreciate life and people and more things around you. Well said, Linda. That's exactly what this knowledge is about. It's not gloom and doom. Look, it's no more gloom and doom than having to have something to eat or drink. It's what's going to happen to all of us. I mean, it just is. And so not talking about it makes it worse, makes it more uncomfortable, makes it more difficult to deal with when it happens to people around you or even yourself or the other people. But as an artist, I think Linda's hitting it. Open up more fully to these ideas. Open up more fully to things that you can make work about. And maybe it is about beauty. Maybe it is about, appreciating life more. That's perfectly death denial stuff. That's perfect, That's really good. I like that, Linda. That was awesome. Hey, well, thank you. And Aaron, great. You got great comments in here. Jeffrey and all the private chat people are commenting and love the framing. Great work, Aaron. Nice set of images. Death denial made me get my vaccine last week. I like it, Pablo. You know what? I did too. I got mine. You can't even see it. I got mine. There you go. What kind did you get, Pablo? What flavor? I got Moderna. That's my favorite flavor. AstraZeneca. Excellent. Good deal, man. Well, thank you, Renzo. And thank you, everyone. And Boguslaw, thank you, man. Thank you for coming in here and spending this time with me. Honestly, I don't say this just to say it. I appreciate your time. Coming in and spending time with us, Aaron and I, let's say for today. And then just coming in every week to listen. I've told my wife this a million times, Jeannie. I've said, man, I don't know if there's going to be anybody in there next week. Why? I don't know. This stuff is just really, you get in your own head and you're not sure. Oh, I don't know if people are going to get this. Give it a chance. Give it a chance. And if you haven't watched the other ones, and you don't even have to watch my stuff, go see somebody else that can really do this justice. Go watch Solomon. Go watch, if you're really into it, go get into it. I guarantee you, it will give you photographic, artistic fodder for life. No pun intended. Tack, Aaron, thanks. Yeah, thank you, Linda. We appreciate that very much. Stay healthy, stay happy. Get your second AstraZeneca flavor in a month, Bob. I'll be sure you do that. I get mine on May 11th. Stay healthy, stay happy. We'll see you next week, and we'll talk about art and the denial of death. Ciao. Bye-bye. Auf Wiedersehen. Au revoir.